You set it up because it's your idea.
So I saw a preseason magazine a couple weeks ago. I think it was Coach Franklin who was being quoted. And I thought it was Jeff Rice who wrote the story, but I just couldn't find it when I was done. Who talked about the pressure of this season and having to perform and rankings and whatever else. And he made reference, and it was kind of an offhand. Well, there was this game in 1994 that Penn State played that they didn't win by as much, and it hurt them from what I understand. Or so it's kind of like an offhand reference like that. And I'm like, 94 Illinois is like an essential Penn State game to know. Like you go in as number two, you win, you come back, you don't win by as much, and you never get a chance to play for the national championship. So that kind of sparked like, what are those essential games? Maybe they aren't wins or losses, but what are the moments that when you say 94 Illinois, or you say, like I'm thinking Alabama Auburn, you say kick six, right? It's the return
Right.
for the touchdown, right? So I was wondering what those games were for Penn State. So that was kind of my prompt of like,
Okay.
what are those games that you say a score or a date or a number and you know?
Okay. I think I nailed the prompt. Um, Before we begin, I do want to clarify because I asked you this question via text. So we each came up with a list of 5 games? Is that how many you came up
Yep,
with?
yep.
Am I
Somebody
gonna
did make a
ruin
list.
two of your games if I say the national championship games can't be on there?
If you say the national championship games can't be on there, you're not going to ruin two of my games.
Okay, perfect, great. Because I don't, I think those are too obvious. I think would be the best way to say that.
Well,
When I
you
came
might
up with
impose on one.
you,
You might impose on one of my 5 if they take both national championships.
okay, all right.
We can
Let's
talk
do
through
it
it. I
this
may
way.
change it to my
Let's
rate.
talk through it. Here, okay. I want to do this relatively chronological order without giving each other's picks away. So I'm going to say, what century is your first game in?
Century? How about what
Uh,
decade? I got one in the 60s.
I have one in the 40s.
Okay, go ahead.
So my
It's like, what's your card? No,
yeah
you go first. You're
no.
smart. So go ahead. 40s. Go ahead.
Okay. My first game in chronological order, I think might not necessarily make the immediate list for most people, and maybe it's just because I'm a good Penn State history buff. But I have the 1948 Cotton Bowl on here. But it's really for other reasons. Obviously, it's related to Wally Triplett and Denny Hogard, um, basically being told that that Penn State can't play if they play, and then Steve Suey comes out and says there will be no meetings. We are Penn State. That's the brand, and
Right.
I think that is quintessential. I think that is really probably the first important, relatively modern Penn State football game, but maybe more so what happened off the field. But
No, and
it
that's the
all
crux
relates
of
to the game. Yeah.
that's the crux of the prompt, and that's the even if it's my wonderful friend Lou Prado would say, no, it's not that. It was something else that was the start of We Are. I love you, Lou. I don't care. Like it's okay to embrace a little bit of fun history, like sort of true stuff
Right.
that makes it worthwhile. So no,
Right.
that's a great pick.
Well, and I think it's like you go back and read the history of Nittany and whether it's the Native American tribe saying that it was this word that just means solo or the made up princess story as well. Like
Yep.
but I think that is where this all starts. So what year is your
I never
next
thought
game?
you. I forgot. I mean, I was thinking about that one. I didn't think my first game is '67
Okay,
when
so
they
that
go to
one's before my
Miami.
next one. Yeah.
Yeah, they go down to Miami. They play the sophomores. Like Joe starts sneaking in sophomores on defense and replaces the seniors who weren't happy with him. The seniors and the team weren't happy with the new coach. Kind of like coaching change that happened a few years ago. And he slowly puts the sophomores in the game, and then the sophomores are starting for the next couple of years, and they have the undefeated season. So that run of the stuff that people feel the disrespect, and we were undefeated and we didn't win championships, starts in '67 at Miami with the sophomores playing more.
Okay. I have a game that's related to that one.
Cool.
However, it is not a Penn State football game.
Is it on your list?
But it is
Wait, you have
on
a
my
non-Penn
list.
State football. This is good.
I have
Great.
I have a non-Penn State football game on this
Okay,
list.
maybe you didn't understand
Two
the prompt, but
years,
you're going to make it
two
great.
years after, 2 years after, Richard Nixon goes
1969.
out and says,
Texas.
"I
Okay.
will declare the national champion the winner of Texas and Arkansas."
Arkansas. Yep.
And Penn State, the first time they really go undefeated and effectively have this great year under Joe Paterno, gets screwed out of the national championship. Joe goes on, I think, was it in the media or at graduation that he kind of called that out?
I think that was media.
Okay.
Didn't know anything about what I knew all this about football this year and didn't know anything about what is something, years later.
But I think this is the first case of Penn State being legitimate case of Penn State being screwed over for a national championship claim. And then another one probably in 94, which we will get
Nice.
to.
Yes, look at you. Two old ones. Good for you.
Okay. All right.
Nice.
Next.
My next one's mine all skew younger now. I'm not till 80s again now.
Okay,
81.
you're next. You're next. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a pretty big
48-14.
gap.
Yeah, 48-14 for me. Down at Pitt, playing number one Pitt. Penn State's down 14-0. Comes back to win 48-14. In that rivalry game, the lore of that with like the big hit on defense by Chet Parlavecchio, maybe the hit out of bounds by Chet Parlavecchio, just the rivalry stuff, and you beat number one team with Dan Marino 48-14. I have one more on my list that's a number, but where I think you can say the final score to some people, and they're like, yeah, okay, I know what you mean.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's why that one's there for me.
I think even like if you're ingrained in again Penn State history and like I know about 48-14 and like what the significance of that and kind of what a moment that was. Um like I think that's still the gotcha pit, I think. Like I think until like your generation phases out, so to speak, like
Yeah, no, and you
it's
always
gonna be
have the
around.
doubling down with Paterno there with the Jackie Sherrill, right? Like a couple years after that, you can't, I'm not going to retire
Right.
and leave the world of college football to the Jackie Sherrills of the world. Well, here's some salt, here's your wound, let's have
Uh,
at it. So,
so okay. All right. The next game on my list isn't till the 2000s, so you might have another one.
I have, if you're not to the 2000s, let's see, I have 2004, that is. Oh, I have the reason for the column, or the reason for the prompt, right? Two. So I'll go with both of them chronologically. So I took the Fiesta Bowl against Ohio State, or against Miami, just because, right? It's the national championship. It's the most watched college football game, one of the most watched college football games ever. It's the good versus evil. It's the fatigues. Even though Penn State had played in the Fiesta Bowl before, I think if you say Penn State and Fiesta Bowl, there's one game people think of.
Right.
It changed how TV does stuff. I mean, they changed the time of the game. They changed what was going on. It made the Fiesta Bowl a meaningful game. It just all those tentacles. And then the reason for the prompt for the story, the 94 Illinois game. So, like, that would be on my list. Just
So
because. Go
I
ahead.
had a 94 game on my list and then I took it off my list. Mainly because I figured one, you would have a 94 game on your list. Two, I actually would argue the Rose Bowl, but I think that probably significance nationally, you're probably right. But I think that Rose Bowl in a lot of ways is probably the second of those unclaimed national championships, if you
Oh, yeah.
will.
And you got the great play early in the game, right? That
Right.
every,
Yeah.
right. I mean, for me, the 94 piece kind of goes to Arkansas, Texas in the same way of like not getting the respect, right? Like, and I've always felt that in the big. I don't feel, and we've talked about a lot, that the Big Ten's trying to get Penn State, but I do feel if Ohio State's number two and goes into Illinois and is down by a boatload of points and comes back and rallies to win late in the game, nobody's bitching about what Ohio State did. They say, "Oh, what a character win that is for them!
Right.
What a great job
Right.
by them!" And Penn State in those instances does not get that credit.
Okay. That makes sense. All right. When's your next game?
I'm done to the 2000s. I only got one left. One, two, three,
Okay.
four. I'm done till 2004.
Okay. I think we have the same one. Is
Go
is
ahead.
it just 6-4?
Yes.
It has to be like it is the poster child of the dark years for Penn State
Yes.
football. It is fascinating if 6-4 and those seasons happen at any other program with any other coach, like particularly now in this era of college football, that coach is gone, and it's so interesting to kind of consider that game being played and then 6-4 happens and just like how do you score it's almost impressive that they scored 4 points like they should almost get extra points for scoring 4 points,
I
correct?
could have gotten two extra. It would have been great. Yeah, and I think that's why the game fits in my mind, the prompt, right? Because the result, the other end of 6-4, is the Orange Bowl in 2005, right? Like that's awful, god awful, and then you come back and you have one loss and you win in overtime, and it's a great night in Miami. But you can't have that night unless you have 6-4. And there's been enough Orange Bowls through the years. You could probably come up with a list of 5 Orange Bowls, right? But there's only one 6-4, and you could say to fans of
Right.
your age and older, "Hey, 6-4," and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, 6-4."
And I think it's like even now, like it's like with Iowa being Iowa and the way they are, like first off, we just went 2 solid minutes talking about 6-4 without even recognizing
Right?
the other team. But that's
Doesn't
how
matter.
like that doesn't
Right.
matter. I think the
Although
other
there's only
thing,
one Big Ten it could be, one Big Ten
right,
team it could be.
right. But that's what I was gonna say. Like it's become such a meme almost. Um, so yeah, um, I think that I agree with that. I agree with the logic that you can't have the Orange Bowl in 2005 without it. I had on my list and then took it off the um the 2005 Ohio State game.
Yep.
I had it on there, took it off in favor of 2 other games more recent. But those would be mine. So are you done? You got your
I'm done.
five
Go
out of
ahead.
the
Let's hear
way?
those 2
Okay.
more recent games.
So I think Michigan 2012, the overtime for
Yep.
overtime,
Yep.
Allen Robinson catch, Bill Belton run. I think a stamp of that Penn State isn't going anywhere, can still hang, can still play football at a high level, still be still make noise nationally. I don't think that Michigan team really ended up doing much that year after that. But I think I have to wonder how much of that their sales are deflated from that. Brady Hoke goes and gets fired a couple years later. Like that probably was kind of the start of all of that, and then Michigan kind of goes on its run. There's a there's a good timeline jump, like a good alternate universe from that point
Yep.
on. I think would be a good one. And then of course the other one I think I debated, but I think you have to put the Ohio State 2016 game on this list just because I think it is the signature win of the James Franklin era. Um, in a lot of ways, like it's also kind of like this everybody's still chasing the memories or
Mm-hmm.
the vibes of that year in a lot of ways. I think if you're really into Penn State history, and we've talked about this, we just had a player on to talk about this. I think you could make the case for that Minnesota game a week before, or a week before. Um, I think the after that, I think the Big Ten championship probably certainly yes, and I honestly think that Rose Bowl is is on that list too. But I don't know if it's a top five or if one that I would consider a top five of these.
Yeah. I mean, there were a couple like the Snow Bowl against Michigan where they had all the snow and they brought the convicts in to clean out
Okay.
the stadium and whatever else. Like again, just in terms of whatever. The 4 OT game didn't make my list. Nebraska 2011. Like does that game at the end of the season just because people remember the teams in the field and it just being different
Yeah.
and the end of an era there. Like does that make the list? 9 overtime Illinois. Like there were a bunch of other stuff that
What about there was another Nebraska game that I actually thought about putting on here. Nebraska 2002. Um,
Taliaferro. Is that Taliaferro's game
I
back?
don't think so. I don't no, that was Miami when
That was Miami. Okay.
he walked out of the tunnel.
Yep.
But I think that game
That was that night. Yeah, it was some
that
night game.
that is the first Penn State football game in my lifetime. So I was 4, 6, 8 when that game happens, 2002. That was the first Penn State football game I can remember there being a legitimate buzz about the week leading up to. Um, I think that one probably should be on or would be on there. Maybe not a top five. Were you going to say the other Nebraska game was it
No, I think
the out of bounds
2002 was what I
catch?
was thinking because I guess I was
Okay.
thinking I forgot I was thinking Taliaferro was Nebraska, but it was Miami. No, that Nebraska game because there was a buzz. I forget which if we took both kids in that game. By then we might have had 4 tickets. Like and it just that was it. It felt more. There was more buzz. There was more juice in that
Yeah.
stadium than there'd been in a while.
Well, and it was
You
the record
know,
holder. Or is it?
yeah,
It's
yeah, it was.
it
Yeah,
was the record holder for
yeah.
however long. Other one that comes to mind from that relative era, that decade, I guess, so to speak, the Jimmy Clausen game. the Jimmy Clausen is going to save Notre Dame football, and then comes to Happy Valley and doesn't know how to play football. Um, I think that's I think that's relatively it. I think the 9 overtime is a good one. I think that's probably the most recent one on the list.
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting, but it wasn't. It was kind of like it's in the 6-4 family, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not like meaningful. Like, oh, this is what a different program is. Like meaningful. Like, well, nobody else has one of those.
Yeah,
Lucky
right.
us, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know.
Um, and you're gonna see that you like in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you're gonna see that game played and talked about, etc. Um, yeah, I think you could throw Iowa 2017 on there. Just because that's Saquon's best game ever, and then Juwan Johnson makes the catch at the end of the game. No, we got a good. I feel like we got a comprehensive list. This was a
Yeah,
good
and
prompt.
I'll be interested to see what other people come up with. Like, I mean, lots of
Yeah.
people chime in, obviously. So, yeah,
And we're gonna write these and explain these pixel deeper, right? Okay, perfect.
yep,
So yeah,
yep.
we're gonna do
I
that
think so.
this week, and then we'll kind of probably have a form or something you can fill out, or you can nominate a game. Um, yeah, I think these are the essential games to know as a Penn Stater. Would be the best way to put that.